All right. Diving in today with Every Young Man's Battle.
Yeah.
This self-help book tackles sexual temptation from a Christian perspective.
Yeah.
We'll be pulling out those key arguments,
Absolutely.
examining the advice given, and hopefully uncovering some unexpected insights along the way.
I think we will.
You know, one thing that really struck me about this book is how much it leans on personal stories.
Yeah.
Like, it really uses them to drive home its points.
It does.
And it starts right off the bat
Right.
with author Fred Stoker's own experience.
Yeah.
And it's pretty intense. We learn about his exposure to pornography early on, like stacks of Playboys.
Wow.
This magazine called From Sex to Sexty. He even mentions a nude painting. It paints a picture of a very specific environment that he grew up in.
It does. It's interesting because the book isn't just presenting this as like a shocking anecdote.
Right.
It's using Fred's story to explore how that early exposure to sexual content can really shape a young man's views on sex and women, even if it seems subtle or indirect. Like, you don't even realize it at the time.
And it makes you wonder, right?
For sure.
How much of our own views are shaped by the things that we were exposed to, maybe without even realizing it.
Absolutely.
At the time, it's pretty profound.
It is.
The book then takes a turn with Fred's conversion to Christianity.
Yeah.
And he describes this like visceral reaction to those same Playboy centerfolds that he used to be drawn to.
Interesting.
Like, he was repulsed by them. You know, it's a pretty dramatic shift, a complete 180.
Yeah, yeah.
And it really highlights how a change in belief can actually lead to a change in desire.
I see.
Which I think is fascinating.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the power of belief systems to shape our wants and needs, like what we truly desire.
For sure.
And the book really argues that God can change someone's desires at their core when they embrace faith. And the authors don't shy away from tougher topics either. Like, they address this idea of the bifurcation myth.
The bifurcation myth.
This idea that you can just like be wild in your youth and it won't impact you later on.
Right.
They completely dismantled that notion.
They do.
Which is interesting because I think a lot of people struggle with that.
For sure.
Not just young men. Like, we all kind of want to believe that we can compartmentalize our lives. That our past actions won't affect our future.
Absolutely.
But the book uses real stories to show how that's just not true. How the choices we make early on can have these ripple effects throughout our lives.
It's true.
And this leads us to another key point that the book really hammers home. And that's the power of visual stimulation.
Visual stimulation.
It's not just about actions, but thoughts as well. And particularly how visual images can trigger this whole chain reaction that leads to lustful desires.
Makes sense.
They even say that for men, impurity of the eyes is a form of sexual foreplay.
Wow.
It's a pretty bold statement.
It is.
But they back it up with stories. Like, they have this one example of this guy named Alex who becomes aroused just by seeing his sleeping sister-in-law's exposed thigh. And then he goes on to masturbate. So this example really gets at the heart of the book's argument, which is that even seemingly fleeting or unintentional glimpses of something sexual can have a really powerful impact on a man's mind and body.
I see.
So that kind of raises the question, if visual stimuli are that potent, how do we manage that?
Exactly.
Right.
And the book offers several strategies. One of them is this idea of making a covenant with your eyes. Similar to the biblical figure Job. And author Fred Stoker talks about consciously training himself to look away from anything tempting. He even describes it as bouncing his eyes.
Bouncing his eyes?
Away from those triggers.
Yeah.
And he even shares this funny anecdote about his brain, kind of trying to fight back, making him think. He recognized every female jogger he saw.
Oh, wow.
You know,
like tricking you into looking?
Yeah, like trying to trick him into looking.
Yeah.
I can see how that would happen.
Right.
The book also uses this metaphor of sumo sex drive.
Sumo sex drive.
To describe how our exposure to sexual content can actually inflate our desires, making them harder to control.
Right.
So if we think about this idea of a sumo sex drive, it raises the question, how much is a healthy sex drive natural?
Right.
And how much is it influenced by the constant barrage of sexualized imagery that we encounter?
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
That line can get really blurry.
It does.
And it makes you wonder what we can do to cultivate a healthy, balanced approach to sexuality in a world that often feels oversaturated with sexual content.
Absolutely.
The book uses the example of the movie Titanic to illustrate this point.
Even though Titanic has a PG-13 rating, it still features nudity and sexual themes.
Yeah.
And they're using this to show how even mainstream media can contribute to this inflation of desire.
It's true.
It's not just about avoiding overtly explicit material. It's about being mindful of the subtle messages that we absorb from various sources.
It's everywhere.
And they definitely aren't holding back when they discuss the topic of masturbation. The book takes a strong stance against it, arguing that it can lead to spiritual separation from God and hinder personal growth. But they do acknowledge the role that loneliness and the pressures of adolescence can play.
They're not just like condemning the act. They're trying to understand the underlying factors that can contribute to it.
Exactly. It's like, we get it. It's tough out there.
It's hard.
Especially for young men. Navigating hormones and social pressure and a sense of isolation can create a breeding ground for these kinds of temptations.
Absolutely.
So if we acknowledge those challenges, what do they propose as solutions? What can someone actually do in the face of all this?
Exactly.
And they suggest focusing on a deeper connection with God through worship and praise, which might surprise some people who view the book as strictly conservative. You know, it's not just about, you know, rules and restrictions. It's also about cultivating this inner relationship.
That connection.
Yeah. Fred even talks about singing love songs to God as a form of worship, arguing that by focusing on that loving relationship with God, you can redirect those desires.
I see.
So it's definitely not the first thing that comes to mind when you think about managing sexual urges. But it does offer an alternative perspective, emphasizing an internal spiritual approach rather than just focusing on external behaviors. So we've talked about this internal struggle. But the book also shifts to a more outward focus with the idea of respecting women. And this concept of honoring a woman's father really caught my attention.
Interesting.
It's a concept that might not resonate with everyone, but it speaks to a deeper idea about respect and recognizing a woman's value beyond just her physical attributes.
Exactly.
The book uses the example of Fred asking his father-in-law for permission to marry Brenda.
Gotcha.
It highlights the importance of recognizing a woman's place within a family and treating her with the respect that comes with that recognition.
I see.
Which is interesting because in today's dating culture, that tradition might seem outdated to some.
Totally.
But I think it speaks to this deeper desire for intentionality in relationships. It's about moving away from a casual approach to dating and embracing a more thoughtful, respectful approach.
It makes you think, are there ways we can adapt those traditional values to fit modern context,
Yeah.
how do we incorporate respect and intentionality into our relationships in a way that feels authentic to us?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
It is.
It's a really good question.
Yeah?
Yeah. It does feel like a lot of the conversations around dating these days focus on those casual connections rather than building something meaningful.
For sure.
So I think it's refreshing
Absolutely.
to see a book challenging that, even if it comes from a more traditional viewpoint.
Right.
And speaking of challenging norms, the book takes it a step further.
All right.
By including perspectives from young women, which I found to be one of the most insightful parts of the book.
I agree.
It was really interesting to hear directly from women about their experiences and desires in relationships.
Absolutely.
It really adds a whole other dimension to the conversation. And I think it challenges some of the assumptions men might have.
About what women want
exactly.
in relationships.
Yeah.
What stood out to you from those women's stories?
Well, one thing that really struck me was how much they emphasized the desire for genuine connection, emotional intimacy, and respect.
Right.
Like they're not just looking for a guy who's physically attractive or successful. They want someone who values them as a whole person. Who sees their intelligence, their faith, their dreams.
It's like they're saying, don't just see my body.
Exactly.
See my heart. Right.
See the whole person.
See the whole person. And it really challenges that stereotype.
Yeah.
That women are solely focused on physical intimacy.
For sure.
And this ties back
to
the book's overall emphasis
on authenticity. It's about being genuine in your faith, in your relationships, in every aspect of your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And these women, they're looking for men who are living their faith in a real tangible way. Not just putting on a show.
Not just talking the talk.
Walking the walk.
Walking the walk, exactly.
Right, but the book acknowledges that this can be really challenging.
It is.
Especially in a world where temptation...
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
Living authentically as a Christian, or really in any belief system that emphasizes personal integrity, requires constant effort and vigilance.
It's a daily battle.
It's a daily battle.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
It's not. And the book doesn't sugarcoat that.
No, they don't.
It shares stories of people
who've struggled, who've fallen, who've had to pick themselves up and start again.
Exactly.
And I think it's encouraging to see that honesty because it makes the whole message feel more relatable.
It does.
And attainable.
For sure.
Like it's not this unattainable standard.
Being
perfection.
Yeah.
It's about real people going through real struggles.
Oh, absolutely.
And those stories remind us that we're not alone.
We're not alone
in our struggles.
Right.
We all face temptation.
We all do.
We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
And we all have the capacity to grow and change.
Absolutely.
So it's ultimately a message of hope.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about achieving perfection, but about striving for progress.
Right.
And relying on grace along the way.
I like that.
And, you know, even with all this talk about fighting temptation, the book doesn't just focus on avoiding negative behaviors. It also talks about cultivating positive habits.
Right.
And it starts with guarding your mind.
Okay.
They even use this metaphor of a corral.
A corral?
They argue that our minds, if left unchecked, can be like wild Mustangs running amok with lustful thoughts and fantasies.
Yeah.
And just like, you need a corral
to
contain
those wild horses.
You need boundaries and discipline.
Absolutely.
To keep your mind focused on what is pure and good.
On the good stuff.
That's a pretty vivid image.
It is.
And they offer some specific strategies for doing that.
All right.
Like, what are
some of those things?
Of the things they talk about. Yeah.
So they talk about recognizing the thought patterns that lead to temptation.
Okay.
Challenging those thoughts with truth.
All right.
And actively replacing them
with
positive, God-centered thoughts.
Interesting.
So it's not just about suppressing desires.
Right.
It's about transforming your mindset from the inside out.
From the inside out. And it makes sense.
It does.
If you're constantly bombarded with negative thoughts and images, it's going to be harder.
It will be harder.
To resist temptation.
Absolutely.
But if you can cultivate
that,
a more positive internal environment,
that positive mindset. Yeah.
You're better equipped.
Exactly.
To make healthier choices.
Healthier choices for sure.
And they also emphasize
the
importance of accountability.
Accountability. Yeah.
Having people in your life who can support you.
Who can support you.
In your journey.
On that journey.
It's about finding a community.
A community, yeah.
Where you can be honest about your struggles.
Yeah.
And receive guidance.
Right.
And encouragement.
It's like having
a team.
A team, yeah.
Of cheerleaders and coaches.
Coaches in your corner.
In your corner, yeah.
Absolutely.
Helping you stay on track and reminding you of your goals.
Yeah, for sure.
So we've talked a lot about men's struggles with temptation.
Right.
But the book doesn't shy away from addressing a topic that's often considered taboo, even in Christian circles.
Okay.
And that's same-sex attraction.
Yeah.
I'm curious how they approach this sensitive issue.
Well, they approach it with a mix of compassion and adherence to their belief system.
Gotcha.
They acknowledge that same-sex attraction is a real experience for many people, and that it's not something that individuals choose, but they frame it within the context of their religious beliefs.
Gotcha.
Differentiating between feelings and action.
Okay. So they're saying that while someone might experience same-sex attraction, they have a choice.
They have a choice.
In how they act on those feelings.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they encourage individuals who experience same-sex attraction to seek support within their faith community, to find a safe space, to process
those feelings,
and to make choices, that align with their religious belief.
That align with their beliefs, right?
So it sounds like they're advocating for this journey.
A journey.
Yeah.
Of self-discovery and reconciliation between one's feelings and one's faith.
Absolutely.
And while they're presenting a specific perspective based on their belief system.
Yeah.
I think it can resonate.
I think it can.
With anyone struggling to reconcile personal desires with a chosen faith or ethical framework.
Yeah.
It highlights
that
universal experience of navigating
right?
Complex feelings.
Yeah.
And finding a path that feels authentic and true to oneself.
It's a journey.
And it also reminds us that even within a seemingly homogenous community, there can be a wide range of experiences.
Of different experiences.
And it's okay. To acknowledge those differences,
And to have open conversations about
those conversations, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a good reminder.
It is.
That empathy and understanding are so important.
Absolutely.
Especially when dealing with these sensitive topics like sexuality and faith.
For sure.
And every young man's battle.
Yeah.
Definitely encourages that kind of open dialogue.
It does.
But it also emphasizes personal responsibility.
It does.
Right. It's not just about talking.
Right.
It's also about taking action.
Yeah, taking action.
And the book concludes by highlighting the importance of sharing our stories. As a way to offer hope and support to others who might be struggling.
Right.
They argue that silence can perpetuate shame.
Shame and isolation.
Yeah. But speaking out can be incredibly healing.
Yeah.
And create a sense of connection for sure.
There's power in knowing you're not alone.
Absolutely.
And hearing that other people walked a similar path.
It normalizes the struggle.
It does.
And makes it feel less overwhelming.
Absolutely. Less overwhelming for sure.
And the book encourages
men
to find those safe spaces to share.
Right,
whether it's with a trusted friend.
A
mentor.
A therapist.
Or a support group. You know, it's about tapping into the power of community. To find strength and encouragement.
Yeah, I like that.
But it's not just about...
It's not just about...
avoiding negative behaviors. It's also about...
It's also about...
proactively pursuing a life of purpose.
Of purpose and meaning.
And meaning.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's like they're saying... Right. Okay.
You're working on overcoming these challenges.
Yeah.
But what are you building?
But what are you building?
In their place.
In their place, exactly.
What are you striving for?
Right, what are you striving for?
And they really emphasize...
They emphasize...
aligning...
your desires.
Aligning your desires...
your faith.
With your...
And finding fulfillment in your relationship with God.
In your relationship with God.
It's about channeling your energy.
Channeling that energy.
And passion into something.
Into something positive.
Positive and constructive.
And constructive.
Yeah.
It could be.
It could be.
Using your talents... to serve others.
Serving others, yeah.
Pursuing your passions. Building strong, healthy relationships.
Absolutely.
It's about finding.
Yeah, it's about finding
that sense of purpose.
That drives you and motivates you.
Motivates you to be.
To become the best version of yourself.
The best version of yourself.
As we wrap up this deep dive into every young man's battle, what's the one takeaway?
Oh, that's a good question.
You hope our listeners walk away with.
I think it all comes back to honesty.
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 Okay.
Being honest with yourself about your struggles.
Okay.
Honest with God about your desires. And honest with those you trust.
Okay.
About your need for support.
Oh.
Honesty.
So foundation.
As a foundation growth.
Yeah.
Healing. And connection. I love that.
Yeah.
It's a message.
It's a message.
That resonates.
That's what resonates.
Far beyond.
Far beyond.
The specific context of this book. It's something we can all strive for.
Right.
No matter our beliefs.
No matter our beliefs.
Or background.
It's
a universal truth.
It is a universal truth.
That speaks to the core.
Of our human experience. We all want to be seen, heard, and understood.
And
honesty is the bridge.
Honesty is that bridge.
That connects us.
Yeah.
To that kind of deep, meaningful connection.
So that deep connection, absolutely.
Well, there you have it, folks.
There you have it.
A deep dive.
Into the themes.
Arguments. And
even the controversies.
Of
every young man's battle. We explored a lot of ground today.
We did.
Covering everything from visual temptation.
Yeah.
And managing desires.
To
respecting women.
And
fostering authentic relationships.
Those authentic relationships.
We also touched on the importance of... finding support. Embracing honesty.
In pursuing a life. Of purpose and meaning. Well, we only scratched the surface.
Yeah, we just scratched the surface.
Of these complex topics. We hope this deep dive has sparked some new insights. And encouraged you to continue exploring these ideas. On your own.
Absolutely.
And remember.
You're
not alone on this journey.
You're not alone.
There are resources.
Communities. And
individuals who are ready to support you.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep.